Hi, how are you?
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Oh, it's a beautiful day.
It is. It is. What is the derivation of griot?
I think it's French.
And it just means storytelling.
It's a West African term for, or maybe it's West African, but it's a West African term for a storyteller. A story it involves performance, story gathering, history, all of that. So it's usually men. It was in families, inherited through families, and you covered the stories of your region. You traveled, you told the stories, you collected stories. And usually they were musicians, dancers, so they used all of those forms in their storytelling.
So it really does capture who you are.
That's what I tried to emulate.
Yeah.
And to put my own African American twist on it, because I am African in my heritage and in the way I identify myself as African American. So both. So I've tried to honor the tradition of the griot, but also put my own definition to it and practice to it as an African American and as an African American woman, because again, this was more of a traditional male role.
When we
But there
first
were women griots too.
when we first spoke, long time ago, you told me stories about teaching the American Revolution with role playing and storytelling and young people learning how to tell the story themselves and even play parts in the
Yes.
story. Um, when I visited your class, it was very hands-on. People were making things. The kids were totally engaged in that process. And then when I spoke with you last week, you said to me at some point in the conversation that what was particularly challenging for you right now, I'm not sure if that's the word you used or not, was the lack of the face-to-face contact for the storytelling, both
Yes,
doing it
and
and
that's
teaching it.
yeah, that's a big concern of mine in that the way that I practice my art form, it depends on traditions from Africa and from African American traditions. So call and response. That people may know part of the story and they actually speak it out loud with you, that there's a spontaneity to it, that you're not up on a stage, that, and not in the way that I do it. I'm not on a stage. Kids are gathered on the floor or in chairs in a circle. And so there's that eye contact and interaction, and it's what I get back as an artist too, is that it's not the applause at the end, it's the process. It's the process of telling a story together, of sometimes asking a question, or the character may ask the kids a question. But I really rely on that eye contact and heartbeat and movement and the size of the kids. If you've engaged them enough, if they're not engaged, to shift in what you're telling. Sometimes I have a plan for stories, like I'm there to tell 45 minutes, an hour, or whatever of stories. And you get a feeling from the group what is needed, what is the message that's needed. Sometimes the stories that talk to me in the head, no, I'm the story for the day. This class needs. And that's something lost through videos and Zoom.
So that feels like that's a significant loss. It sounds like that. How are
Yeah,
you dealing with
for
that?
me, and it's trying to, I think I've mourned, last month was a month of mourning for me. I had some trouble adjusting to this. I came into storytelling late in my life. I lived with it in my family, all around me. The stories, it was how I connected with family members that were so far away. It's how I connected with family members who were now ancestors. And so this was something I came into and fully in the year 2000. So before that, I loved jobs that I had and roles that I had in the community, but there was always this question of I've had jobs where I've made a lot of money in executive positions and in corporate America, but it was always and. And once I began storytelling, and especially as a full-time storyteller, there was no and in my life. So here we are with the COVID pandemic, and is there again. And not only and, but what and how. How can I be a storyteller in this time period? How can I shift who I am and how I present and how I interact with especially young people in this time period?
What kind of responses are you coming up with to that?
Well, what I am going to start, I was going to start it this month, but packing to move right now. But next month, whether I'm packing or not, at least going out into the street 1 day a week or 2 days a week with the kids that are in the after school program at McKinley Brighton, and actually showing up with an appointment at the edge of the sidewalk and telling stories. And they can sit on the porch or the stoop or at the other edge of the sidewalk. I know they say 6 feet away, I do 10 to make sure, but that way I can story tell and still have that interaction. And then I plan to, as the summer goes on, to see if there's people in the community and other places of the other neighborhoods that would like that for their kids that are home and not in school and don't have camp, and doing sidewalk storytelling. In 2000, the summer of 2000, I was invited by Geneva Hayden, a community woman from the south side of Syracuse, to do street corner storytelling. And we would go out and unload all of these boxes of books, and I would tell stories, and then kids would come and they would wear my coat, my storytelling coat, and they would tell stories. They would tell stories that they either had read through the books that they got the last time we saw them, or they would just make up a story on the spot. And so that kind of performance out in the street I'm used to. And so I see that as one way to storytelling the way that I'm used to doing it.
Sort of like an ongoing porch festival for storytelling.
Yeah, just, and the more I thought about it, in the tradition of griots wandered through regions. They were a performance class of people, and they wandered from region to region, and they would come back around to that village, on rotating through, or be invited to weddings or funerals and stuff. And their job was to tell the collective stories of their people, of the past, the present, and their future hopes, their moral values and character ed that we call it character ed. But what did their societies believe in and behavior, and that was their way of passing history on too. So it's kind of going back to that tradition. And I think the issue is doing it safely. I can't have large gatherings of people, but I can have that safe pod of people that are together in that home. Right. Whatever right. That pod looks like, I can go to them and safely stand back. This is one of the ways that I make my living. So going to street corner performances of passing the hat in front of the house if you want to make a donation, to be able to get a little donation towards the stories. But I think the most important thing is, as a storyteller, to practice my craft. I do other work, and that will pay the bills, but I need to storytell. I need to do.
As you're doing that, and let's say you do the pod of a household, and they're on their porch and you're in the front yard, and you mentioned something about the kids that you're working with at McKinley. Would you be able to have some school kids with you to do that? No, because we wouldn't be able to distance them. And how do you take it? I would go to outside their house, the edge of the sidewalk, or that grassy space between street and sidewalk, and do it there. So if the family next door wants it, then I'll just step over. If other people in the neighborhood want it, once that McKinley family is taken care of, I just step over and do it. Again, it's not about money at this point in my life. It's about practicing the craft.
And on the other part, I'm working with my website designer and marketer, Laura Thorne, who's amazing in Syracuse, New York, to develop online programming, videos, that kind of thing too, to supplement and to zoom in. I hope when school does open, if I'm not able to go there safely, or if we're still on Zooms and that kind of learning in the fall, to part of my marketing this summer will be to connect with some of the teachers that I've worked with in the past and hopefully be a part of their curriculum, to be a part of their Zooms.
So ongoingly, you're going to figure out ways of using this tool, which I would like to talk with you about, but not so much right now. I'm fascinated by this new form of homeschooling. It's, you know,
Yes.
right? People are
And
home.
it's hard. You look at, it's not equal. We already had disparities in education as it was. But when you have communities that don't have Wi-Fi in their home, maybe there's one phone, maybe there's one laptop, and mom or dad have been working on that laptop, and we've run across that where, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine that runs a PGR Foundation in Syracuse, in Onondaga County, and they deal with a lot of girls that are in single family households, some households that are where the girls are at high risk, you know, and they have girls that don't, you know, one mother I know that they were talking with was home working and is going to be working at home. It looks like she's going to continue working from home, one laptop. So the challenge of her daughter being able to go online for schoolwork is a real problem. She's trying to keep a roof over their head and feed them. And she needs her daughter to be able to get on the laptop to take school lessons. So PGR Foundation was able to get her a laptop for that to happen. The other thing is that you're dealing with families that maybe there is a laptop, but the laptop is not used at home in that way, and they don't have Wi-Fi for the child to get on laptop. Maybe it's a laptop he's taken to school or takes down to the library to use the Wi-Fi. And so that there's the inequities become enlarged with this pandemic.